Hello my fellow historians, and welcome to Richard Wacker's House of History. Today we are discussing the conflict of the Spanish-American War and the turning point of this splendid little war. Now here's Lawrence Nightingale with some background information. Lawrence?
Thanks, Dick. Yes, this military conflict at San Juan Hill, also known as Kettle Hill, changed the outcome of the war between Spain and the United States. Now let's take a closer look.
In the Battle of San Juan Hill, 760 Spanish Army regular troops were ordered to hold the San Juan Heights against an American offensive on July 1, 1898. For unclear reasons, Spanish General Arsenio Linares failed to reinforce his position, choosing to hold nearly 10,000 Spanish reserves in the city of Santiago.
Sir! I'll be your orderly, sir.
Delighted, Sergeant Marchand.
Spanish hilltop entrenchments, while typically well concealed, were not at all correctly positioned for plunging fire, making return fire at the advancing Americans more difficult. Most of their fortifications and trench lines were laid out along the geographic crest of the heights, instead of the military crest. This meant that the fire from the Spanish troops would have difficulty hitting the advancing enemy when attacking Americans reached the defilade at the foot of the heights. Once they began scaling the hill, however, the attackers would be in full view of the defenders, who could engage the Americans with both rifle and artillery fire.
You take first section, take Indian Bob with you. Yes, sir, Indian.
Most Spanish troops are recently arrived conscripts. However, their officers were skilled in fighting Cuban insurgents. The Spanish were also well equipped with supporting artillery, and all Spanish soldiers were armed with 7mm Mauser M1893 rifles, a modern repeating bolt-action arm with a high rate of fire and utilizing a high-velocity cartridge and smokeless powder. Spanish artillery units were armed mainly with modern rapid-fire breech-loading cannon, again using smokeless powder. Likewise, the American regular forces and troopers were armed with bolt-action Craig rifles chambered in the smokeless .30 Army caliber. However, U.S. artillery pieces were of an outmoded design with a slow rate of fire. They also used less powerful black powder shells, which limited the effective range of support fire for the U.S. troops. A small 4-gun detachment of hand-cranked Gatling guns in .30 Army caliber was also present.
Don't make it easy for them.
General William Rufus Shafter commanded the 5th Corps of about 15,000 troops in 3 divisions. Jacob F. Kent commanded the 1st Division, Henry W. Lawton commanded the 2nd Division, and Joseph Wheeler commanded the Dismounted Cavalry Division, but was suffering from fever and had to turn over command to General Samuel S. Sumner. Shafter's plans to attack Santiago de Cuba called for Lawton's division to move north and reduce the Spanish stronghold at El Caney, which was to take about 2 hours, then join with the rest of the troops for the attack on the San Juan Heights. The remaining 2 divisions would move directly against the San Juan Heights, with Sumner in the center and Kent to the south. Shafter was too ill to personally direct the operations and instead set up his headquarters at El Pozo, 2 miles from the heights, and communicated through mounted staff officers. A company from the Signal Corps ascended in a hot air balloon to reconnoiter the hill. The balloon made for a good target for the Spaniards. Hawkins' brigade had already passed by the newfound route, and Kent ordered forward the brigade under Colonel Charles A. Wyckoff. It was noon by the time Wyckoff began heading down the trail, and 30 minutes later he emerged from the woods and was struck by a Mauser bullet. He died as his staff officers carried him to the rear. Next in command was Lieutenant Colonel William S. Worth, who assumed command but within 5 minutes fell wounded. Lieutenant Colonel Emerson Liscombe assumed command and within another 5 minutes received a disabling wound. Lieutenant Colonel Ezra P. Ewers, fourth in command of the brigade, assumed command. Kent and Sumner lined up for the attack and waited for Lawton's division to arrive from El Caney. Lawton did not arrive as scheduled, and no orders came from either Shafter or Wheeler, and the troops waited at the base of the hill, plagued by constant Spanish Mauser gunfire in areas dubbed Hell's Pocket and/or Bloody Ford. San Juan Hill was the highest of the 2 hilltops forming San Juan Heights. The southernmost point was most recognizable for the Spanish blockhouse that dominated the crest. The cavalry brigade then moved into position, in open view of Spanish positions on the heights. The Americans began to suffer casualties from rifle and artillery fire, while awaiting orders from General Shafter to take San Juan. As the volume of fire increased, officers began to agitate for action. The 2nd and 10th Infantry Regiments of the 2nd Brigade were ordered by the brigade commander, Colonel E.P. Pearson, to advance towards the Spanish lines. Positioned on the far left of the American line, the 2 regiments moved forward in good order, advancing towards a small knoll on the Spanish right flank, and drove groups of Spanish skirmishers back towards their trenches. Lieutenant Ord was among the first to reach the crest of San Juan Heights. As the Spanish fled, Lieutenant Ord began directing supporting fire into the remaining Spanish when he was shot in the throat and mortally wounded. General Hawkins was wounded shortly after. At 1350, Private Arthur Agnew of the 13th Infantry pulled down the Spanish flag atop the San Juan blockhouse. The secondary heights, later called Kettle Hill, was the lower of 2 high points forming the San Juan Heights. The higher hill, which would become known as San Juan Hill, had the Spanish defenders' main blockhouses and most of the defending force. The 2 hills were connected by a draw or saddle on a north-south axis. The San Juan Heights are located about a mile east of Santiago. Kettle Hill received its name from the Americans, who found a large sugar kettle near the base. Using both small arms and times-used artillery shells, the Spanish long-range fire caused many casualties as the Americans prepared for the assault. The main hill was later referred to as San Juan Hill.
What do you think, sir? Can you engage the San Juan Heights? We can, sir. Good. Then the Rough Riders will move on Kettle Hill and review the right. Very good, sir. Good luck. Thank you, sir.
The battle had been a hard one for the Americans, who suffered almost 5 times as many losses as the Spanish. The Spaniards, meanwhile, had literally fought to the knife, losing 1/3 of their force in casualties but yielding very few prisoners. Lawton's division, which was supposed to join the fight early on July 1st, did not arrive until noon on July 2nd, having encountered unexpectedly heavy resistance in the Battle of El Caney. The Americans, along with the aid of Cuban insurgents, immediately began the investment of Santiago, which surrendered on July 17th. The large number of U.S. casualties from small arms fire incurred in the fighting led directly to the Army's decision to update and modernize its small arms arsenal. The 45-70 and M1892 Krag Springfield rifles were quickly retired from service in favor of new Mauser pattern 33, later 36, M1903 Springfield rifles, while remaining 30 caliber Army Gatling guns were replaced in 1909 by the M1909 B'nai Mercy machine gun. Now let's go to John Van DeMarcus with a special interview.
Hello, I'm John Van DeMarcus. I'm here with President Theodore Roosevelt in an exclusive interview about his experience in the Battle of San Juan Hill. Mr. President, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Woke up at my usual time of 4 in the morning, had a cup of Folgers coffee, and exercised.
What a great way to start your day. But anyway, let's get started. So can you tell us about San Juan Hill?
That was quite a day. We had to rid Cuba of those Spaniards. They were causing too much problems, and Cuba deserved its independence. It's because of nations like Spain that I employed my speak softly and carry a big stick philosophy.
So how did you get involved in the battle?
Well, I was strongly influenced in my opinions of global expansion and American international affairs by Alfred Thayer Mann's The Influence of Sea Power Upon History. I strongly feel we need to expand our global power and make America an international world power. So when the Spanish-American War broke out, I knew I had to leave my desk in Washington and join the Army.
I see. And how did you ascertain the position as a Rough Rider?
Well, I was offered the position by Russell Alger to command the group originally known as the 1st U.S. Volunteer Cavalry, but due to my inexperience with cavalry, I rejected the position. I chose to be Lieutenant Colonel of the regiment. Colonel Leonard Wood, having more experience, was given the position.
And who was a part of this regiment?
There were people from all over the country. Cowboys from the West, sons of rich men from the East, athletes and farmers alike. Everyone wanted to join this group. There were too many people who applied than we can ever accept.
Now how did you go about training this group of men from all walks of life?
It was early 1898, and Colonel Wood required all the men to report to Texas. We trained them for long hours each day in the humid heat. It was tough trying to have the men band together, as they were from all over their country as a single unit. With people from different backgrounds forced to come together as one unit, tensions flared and there was many confrontations.
Did you prepare them effectively for battle?
Well, we won, didn't we? But yes, we supplied our men with the latest in technology, including Krag Jorgensen rifles. It gave our men a significant advantage, as the new rifles were smokeless and had a higher rate of fire. We also outfitted everyone with khaki pants instead of the typical wool pants to allow for maximum comfort in the immense heat in Cuba.
Now I understand there was confusion on the day of departure. Can you describe to us what happened?
We were told to report at one station in Tampa, Florida, to take us to a naval base to set sail. Now what happened was we were on time for the train, but the train never was. We had to run to another track and catch the train, and just made it out in time before the ships left the port. The only problem was that we didn't have our horses.
Well, that could be a problem if you're meant to be a cavalry unit.
Yes, so we really became an elite infantry unit, but we got the job done.
Yes, you certainly did. Well, I thank you for your time, Mr. President.
You're very welcome, my fellow American.
Now here's Lawrence Nightingale with an exclusive interview.
Hello, I'm Lawrence Nightingale, and I'm here with Richard Harving Davis, a reporter who witnessed the bloody charge up San Juan Heights. How are you doing today, Mr. Davis?
You know, I'm doing quite swell today, but it's hard to believe it's been 60 years to that battle. I mean, it feels like just yesterday we were out there, young man, you know?
Yes, in fact, it is July 1st, 1958, exactly 60 years since taking the hill. How do you feel about that?
Well, Sonny, I'm glad God has blessed me enough to allow me to live this long and survive through that conflict. But you know, it's tough for me to say, but I still suffer from harsh side effects of being in that war zone.
And how is that?
It's an interesting question. Yeah. I still suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome, which you get from being in war zones. It's more common nowadays. But the thunder of the harsh Spanish artillery combined with the creation of the new German machine guns that they had, it just damaged my psyche. I was a nervous wreck.
Was watching all the death around you painful?
Anytime you see a fellow American sacrifice his innocent life in the name of freedom, it is a painful and horrifying thing to witness. Watching the soldiers out there writhe in pain and struggle to stay alive with the chance of never seeing their wives, their children, and their parents again, it messes with your mental state and causes considerable damage.
Well then, how did you handle it?
Well, my job was to report and record any events concerning the Rough Riders. I was assigned to Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, the finest man in the war. I had no choice but to block my emotions and focus at the task at hand. So I gathered my thoughts and I recorded anything I believed to be relevant. Afterwards, though, it was a complete mess.
How did you cope with it?
I didn't at first. I couldn't sleep for days. Hold on, I gotta change my diaper. Sorry. So as I was saying, I couldn't sleep for days. Seeing my buddies die out there because of those filthy Spaniards, I just got so upset at first.
Does it still bother you?
You know, I no longer get upset, but I still get angry at times. Anytime I see someone of Spanish descent, I still get filled with anger. My blood starts boiling and... Hold on. Is that what I think it is? It is! It's a dirty Spaniard! Oh!
I think he's dead.
I'm an omelet! Oh, look at that.
Ew. I'm putting that in the video.
got it.
Ankle shot.